This video is going to briefly look at Act 4, Scene 1. It's when Macbeth seeks out the witches for a second time. He has heard that Macduff is in England with Malcolm and that they are planning to attack Scotland, and he is feeling insecure. So he finds the witches, and most people analyse this scene from when Macbeth arrives. But I think an overlooked part and a really interesting part is just before Macbeth arrives and the witches are making their potion. I think there's some lovely imagery here for you to analyse. Let's begin with the imagery of animals. We have an amphibian here, a toad, a snake, a reptile, and a bat, which, as we know, is a mammal, but Shakespeare's audience would have been confused by the three of these animals. They would have been confused about how a toad can live in water, how a snake can move and reproduce, and how a bat can fly around at night without flying into trees. So these three animals would have been seen as quite supernatural, almost magical, and something mysterious about them. In addition, they would have been seen as quite menacing and quite dangerous animals, which is why they're associated with poison, venom, and stings. So they're associated with danger here. In addition, they're associated with visceral imagery, so the imagery of body parts. We have the entrails, which have been poisoned, and the chaudron of a tiger. Chaudron there meaning the intestines or the entrails. So we've got this lovely animalistic imagery here, amphibian, reptilian, and mammalian, but very mysterious and supernatural, associated with the idea of poison and venom, and the visceral imagery of body parts. Further to that visceral imagery of body parts, we have some classic Shakespearean racism in this spell and in the ingredients. Shakespeare's audience, living under a Christian moral framework, would have been quite used to anti-Semitism as a cultural norm, and in particular in Shakespeare's plays, there's often references to anti-Semitism in Shakespeare's plays. So they put the liver of a Jewish person in their potion, and they call them a blaspheming Jew, which is a reference there to the fact that Jewish people don't fit under this Christian moral framework. And there was some panic and some moral and religious panic about anybody who wasn't a Christian in Shakespeare's day. Remember, society was just emerging from the the Protestantism versus Catholicism disruption of Henry VIII, Mary, and Elizabeth's reigns. And that wasn't over. As you know, just after Macbeth was written, James I was part of the gunpowder plot, when Guy Fawkes and his friends tried to blow up Parliament in order to get rid of the Protestant king because they wanted a Catholic king on the throne. In addition to that, we've got these Middle Eastern images of Turks and Tartars and their body parts. So we've got visceral imagery again alongside Shakespeare's racist references here. More shockingly, we have an image of a dead baby being thrown into the cauldron here. The finger of a birth-strangled babe. So the witches are talking about a dead baby here, which echoes quite menacingly Lady Macbeth's reference earlier in the play to dashing her baby's brains out. This would have been more shocking. Remember, the witches speak in trochaic tetrameter, which is rhythmic and nursery rhymish, and would have been almost entertaining. And yet this is juxtaposed with the shocking and menacing and dangerous imagery. For example, the dead or stillborn baby's finger here. In addition to that, they have this natural imagery which shows that nature has been corrupted. This references and echoes the night where Macbeth murdered Duncan, and the horses were eating each other and the owls were attacking the falcons and nature was disrupted and doing unnatural things. Here we have a sow, a female pig, eating her 9 farrow, her 9 piglets. So we have a female pig who has eaten her offspring, and the witches have included her blood in that potion. So before Macbeth arrives, the witches successfully, and Shakespeare successfully, sets up through his imagery a scene of great threat and menace, which foreshadows, of course, the threat and the menace that is coming. Just before this scene, we had Hecate promising to bring everything to a fatal end. We know just after this that Macbeth murders Macduff's children. This is a very dark part of the play, and this scene sets the scene for that absolutely beautifully. So I think it's really worth analysing, even though it is a much overlooked scene in the play.